Welcome back to the Hard Truth Studios on this Friday. It's time. Game weekend, man. It is going to be a fun weekend. Great weather. Little fall-like, crispy out there, but that's okay. Hoosier Hysteria tonight. Indiana men's soccer hosting Michigan State tonight. Then tomorrow, of course, Indiana taking on Nebraska. Number 16th ranked Indiana taking on Nebraska in college football. So looking forward to that. And I can't wait to get out there and just enjoy all that. It's just, and I was talking about this, the shot father, Todd Leary, with us from myjumpshot.com. And make sure if you seen, heard of a kid or anyone that needs work with their jump shot, just go to myjumpshot.com and get the help you need from the shot father. Todd Leary, and man, this is going to be, and so unused to talking about this, but Indiana is in the conversation of being one of the teams in the country that are likely to head to the college football playoffs. Now, no one else is going to say likely. I'm saying likely because I still see an 11-1 slate for the Hoosiers. They're going to be favored, and they're favored this weekend against Nebraska. They will be favored next week against Washington. They will be favored at Michigan State. They'll be favored at home against Michigan. They will not be favored in Columbus against Ohio State, nor do I think that they win that game. But then they come back and they'll be favored against Purdue. Now, being favored and winning are two different things, granted. I just think that Indiana is set up to win all of those games and go 11-1, Todd. But the thing is, they're not going to be alone. 11-1 is going to be this magical mark, I think, because Ohio State already has a loss. If they win out, they're going to be 11-1. Their biggest chance of losing is playing Penn State. I think that Indiana would rather see Penn State lose that game because then they would also have a loss to Ohio State because this tiebreaker is going to get crazy. Then I think if Penn State loses, that'll give them a loss, which I think they will end up being 11-1. So you've got Ohio State, Penn State 11-1, Oregon very likely to go 12-0, maybe 11-1, and then if you had Indiana at 11-1, that's good and bad because that puts Indiana amongst those other tall trees that no one else kind of wants to put them up with. And I'm like, oh boy, I can already see it. An 11-1 Indiana getting left out. That would suck. But I think the Big Ten ultimately gets 4 teams in if they're all 11-1 or better. But Indiana has to overcome perception. And while that's not fair to a lot of people in their thinking, it's not really. But it is what it is, but they have the opportunity to take care of business. If you beat Nebraska, if you beat Washington, if you go to Michigan State and win, if you beat Michigan, if you're competitive at Ohio State, then you're going to get the respect that is due, I think.
If they get to that point, yes. If they get to 11-1, they're at that point with the notoriety. I think this is where you can use it to their advantage. The notoriety that Coach Cignetti is getting nationally right now, as an IU football fan, I'm looking at that negatively. Like, I don't want him to continue to get this publicity because it's going to be very difficult at the end of the season to hang on to him. I know we had this discussion last week and you disagree with me, but if Indiana's 11-1 and he has the same level of notoriety that he has right now, I do think from a football selection committee grouping, that does help them. I think that he's been talked about so highly by such big time people right now that if they get to 11-1, they're going to be looked at not just as your typical Indiana team at 11-1. They're going to be looked at a little differently. On the flip side of that, if they get to 11-1, I think that creates all kinds of issues for Scott Dolson and keeping him around at the university.
Well, I tell you, they're going to probably have to pay him in the order that a big time coach is paid. Now, I'm not saying they're going to pay him $10 million. They're not going to do that.
I think they're going to have to pay him more than $10 million.
Oh, well, first of all, that ain't happening from Indiana. I just don't see it. But I think that an 8, they're going to have to give him a raise. He actually is getting raises, but it's odd. He's getting, there's a lot of bonuses that are kicking in already halfway through the season. Bowl game, poof, he's already eclipsed that. These are like $100,000, $200,000 bonuses here and there. When in actuality, that's chump change in what we're talking in the grand scheme of what we're talking about. That is lunch money. Mark Stoops at Kentucky makes $9 million a year. That's a maybe better than average SEC team. They have not done anything, through that course, but in football, you're going to have to pay the price because football ultimately is where it's the engine that drives the plane and where the money is going to come from. And Todd, there's been a lot of talk of the Big Ten SEC kind of forming, just kind of controlling college football as we going forward. And I know that Greg Sankey, he's he'd love to see like an NFL type model amongst the best teams. And you better have your program at top acting and at optimum capacity because you want to be in this, whatever it turns out to be, you want to be in that because that's where the money's going to be.
Yeah. And I'm just, we're not, just as we talked about, we're not accustomed to having this level of excitement and the big noon kickoff and all that in town and College Game Day talking about us and Pat McAfee and all the talk yesterday. You'll turn on the sports talk shows today, and at some point in time they will talk about Indiana football and Curt Cignetti. And so I'm just saying I don't want it to happen. I'm just realistic and understanding that the money is going to be different. And when you talk about SEC teams, they throw around different money than most Big Ten teams, including Indiana. And so it's going to be an issue they're going to have to discuss. I'm not saying I don't know Coach Cignetti. I don't know him well enough to be able to make a prediction, but I will say this. When the money is that big, and he really doesn't have a major tie to the state of Indiana, it's going to be on to him. That's my opinion, and I hope I'm wrong.
Well, I get it, because why wouldn't that be the line of thinking? We're talking about Indiana here. So why would that not be the line of thinking? Right. Luckily for Indiana, I think that Cignetti is a different cat. He's just a different kind of dude, man. And his wife, he said publicly, his wife loves it in Bloomington. That's happy wife, happy life. He's got, he's still got the same recliner that's like 80 years old. So it's not that he doesn't like the money, but he's probably already doubled what he was making at James Madison. That's going to continue to go up. He's happy, I think. But I at the end of the day, he's 63, and I've said this so many times. He's doing something that no one else has been able to accomplish. And there are a lot of guys that are in that line. There are people on TV every week that tried to do it and they couldn't do it. Urban Meyer said that this team is one of the best coached teams in the country, and I agree. And part of that is because his staff, Todd, his offensive and defensive coordinators have been with him for a decade. That's unheard of in any sport.
I agree, but I don't expect that to stay the same either.
Unfortunately, me either.
I don't know those guys either, but I'll just say, usually the coordinators have the the goal in the back of their locker of becoming a head coach. And there's going to be no time I think those guys are hotter than what they're going to be at the end of this season. And so it's just I don't want to sound like doom and gloom guy here, because I know everything I'm saying sounds like something we don't want to deal with. But I think it's a good problem to have, but it's a problem that they're going to have. And I hope Indiana just steps up and pays the money. And I think in past, I think the NIL helps that situation, because money's just different now. They're throwing around money a little differently than they used to. And I do believe, I think Indiana will pony up and pay a lot more money than what they were intentionally or first thinking when they hired him they were going to end up paying. I think that number is going to be a lot bigger, a lot faster.
I agree, because no one inside of the administration could have foreseen this transformation. I mean, even when I was saying, man, they're going to start 6-0. This didn't dawn on me on how this wave of everything would be. I was just looking at it by the numbers. I didn't imagine this scenario on how big this was going to be.
And Jim, think about it. Like, it's not just starting 6-0. It's the fact of when you get the Urban Meyers of the world, and not just Urban Meyer, but, big time respected analysts across the country talking about how well coached they are. And I heard someone yesterday say he is the next Kalen DeBoer. That's not a good thing, because I guarantee you when Kalen DeBoer went to Washington, people didn't think a year later he was going to end up in Alabama. And so they're just comparing him to how hot Kalen DeBoer was a year ago. And that just, I think Indiana's going to step up and pay the money, because I think that they're catching lightning in a bottle, and they are really enjoying the wave that you mentioned. But yeah, I think they're going to have to pay the money, but I do think they will pay the money. So that's a good sign. Question for you.
Yes, sir.
You have any inside information or know anything behind the Tony Bennett retiring? Is that an illness issue?
I'm glad you brought that up. Really weird on the timing. That's the first thing I said is, man, okay, I don't get this.
Yeah.
You heard people chat. There was chatter about, he likes Krzyzewski and all these guys. He was the way the sports have changed. I'm like, wait a minute. All the people you just mentioned were cheating their ass off. So it's like they mentioned Saban and Krzyzewski, and I'm like, hold on. Their payers were paid. So I don't want to hear that crap that because everyone else is now getting to play by the same rules. That's bull. I don't know, but it's really weird when you're this close to the start of your season. You've been practicing all summer. I've had a couple of people ask me, if somebody got some dirt on him. He's always been an upstanding guy. I have not heard anything, but I am just shocked that there has to be something causing this.
There has to be something, in my opinion, and it's probably, I'm guessing it's going to be health related. Like, in this scenario, I think what you said is probably funny, because with most coaches at this timing, I would have thought the same thing you're saying. Some kind of scandal, something they've got to hide, something they've got to cover up. Not with Tony Bennett. With Tony Bennett, my first thought was, oh no, I hope he's not sick or some type of illness or family situation or something. Because he's just that dude. Like, he's, you just don't expect that out of. It'll shock me if it is something like that with the Bennett family.
Yeah, me too. And he's awfully young. Maybe it is the fact that he doesn't want to deal with it anymore, because
could be
Virginia
his timing is just so bad for that. Like, he probably did nothing. No rules changed in the last month that would have made that any different. I would have termination because he's that kind of upstanding dude, to give the University of Virginia a chance to, hire somebody. Because right now they're just going to have to go with their assistants.
Yes. And I wonder what the NIL situation is like at Virginia.
And they're longtime assistants, and they've been there with him for a long time. And there was even a report on them last year. They're some of the highest paid assistants in the whole country. So, I mean, they're very familiar with the program and the system and all that. I don't know how much they'll suffer from that regard, but it's not Tony Bennett on the sideline.
No, and again, Virginia is a very, very well respected school, but I wonder what the NIL situation is like there. If there is something to it, who knows? But brother, I hope you stay safe and have an enjoyable, relaxing weekend watching the games and enjoying all that.
I appreciate it. Can't wait. Look forward to it.
Appreciate you, the Todd Father. Make sure you go to myjumpshot.com. For those of you that know or seen or heard of someone that could use some help with their jump shot, the Shot Father will take care of you.